Well, today finds me in northern New Hampshire along Cascade Brook. Cascade Brook is very close to a very famous natural feature called the Basin. If you park at the Basin parking lot, there's a trail called the Basin's Cascade Trail that leads up the Kinsman Range here. We're heading west towards the Kinsman Range, and it follows closely to this brook with many cascades and waterfalls. There's a lot more back here than any of the waterfall guides indicate. It's pretty much one after another. So I'm going to do some exploring. I saw a little bit of this last year, but I didn't record, so I came back to see more of it. It's a good morning for recording waterfalls. We got nice flat light, so there's no shadow problems. And yes, this brook is cascading over these granite ledges, and we're going to follow the brook and the trail up towards the Appalachian Trail. And the Appalachian Trail goes to Lonesome Lake and then to Kinsman Pond and north and south Kinsman Peaks. I'm going to be heading in that general direction. There's also a trail that branches off the Appalachian Trail called the Kinsman Pond Trail. It's got mixed reviews right now. I'm going to see how it looks. If it's not too overgrown, I might take it so I can make a loop or a figure 8 on today's hike. There's plenty of trails around here to mix it up a little. I don't have to do it out and back unless I want to. But the Appalachian Trail is nearby. It's going to be increasing sun today. So when we get up to Lonesome Lake and Kinsman Pond, if it looks clear enough, I'll do the extra half-mile climb up to North Kinsman Peak, which has some nice ledges and some nice views. I chose this hike today partially because the visibility was questionable. The weather wasn't. Pretty much the rain is over. We had some rain yesterday, so it wasn't a rain issue. It was more, do I want to hike 4 or 5 miles and not get a view, or do I want to hike 4 or 5 miles out and see some stuff along the way and then maybe get a view if the cloud ceiling lifts. So let's keep recording the waterfalls on the Cascade Brook as we ascend the Kinsman Range on the Basin's Cascade Trail. All right, about 10-minute walk above that first ledge where I started this video, which that is off trail. I went off trail to try to find the first falls on this brook. So I basically went to where the brook joins the brook that goes through the basin and then followed it upstream off trail, but I wasn't far off trail. So this is the first main falls here, and actually I was able to find the top of this falls last year from the main trail, the Basin's Cascade Trail. So if you take the Basin's Cascade Trail uphill from the basin, you'll start seeing this ledge off to your left or south. It's a huge ledge. It's probably dropped 60, 80 feet here. I don't know if it's a flume or a waterfall. It's not really dropping straight down, but it's certainly beautiful. And there's a reason why there's no vegetation over this ledge. This is a pretty big watershed, and during heavy rains and snow melt, there would be enough water cascading down here to tear apart and unroot any trees or moss or anything that would try to grow on this ledge. There's just a little bit of moss here, and that's all. So keep that in mind if you hike an area like this when there's heavy rain expected. These can turn into torrents that are impassable. Let's keep exploring this first falls. I'm going to call it First Falls because it doesn't have a name on any of the maps or waterfall guides that I have found, but we'll give it a name. We'll call it First Falls or First Flume. And it's just a beautiful area here. I've been in the mountains for 3 days last summer. It was my day to go back. Didn't have a lot of extra time, so I came over here just to check this out. And it was a really hot day, and I'll tell you what, there's all kinds of little places here you can just slide on in and take a nice cool dip. And because this gets a lot of sun, the water is not ice cold. It's cold, but it's not ice cold. right, well, we've made it to the top of what you could see from the bottom of First Flume or First Falls. This is the top of that. From the bottom, this is as far as you can see. And we're getting a little bit of view of the Franconia Ridge in the clouds, but it's raising. The cloud ceiling is raising. I don't know if it'll raise all the way to the tops of these mountains. The mountains can make their own weather, especially in the summer when there's a lot of moisture. I always come prepared. Rain gear is always in the pack. Extra non-cotton layers to keep me warm when wet, if I get wet. And let's just keep walking up this ledge. This is absolutely beautiful. I'll call this Second Flume because it's definitely not a falls, but it's worth seeing. And we'll call it Second Flume for our purposes. Alright, so above Second Flume, the brook and the trail come very close together. The trail's just right back here. And the geology changes a little here, and so does the type of falls. Instead of a big dome of pink granite, this is more of a gray colored rock that's in layers. So let's go see what kind of falls that creates. Some of these falls are named, and I don't have a map that shows the names, it just shows the trails. So I will add names to the falls where appropriate. I don't think this one has a name, but we'll add it in if there is one. All right, well, we'll call this Third Falls. Definitely more jagged, not as smooth as that granite ledge, but still pretty in its own way, and it keeps going up. Here's the bottom of it right here. Back there, we got a nice drop here, a pool, another drop, and then above that there's a third or fourth drop. And just for reference, this basin's Cascade Trail is blazed in blue occasionally, but we're on it now, and you can see it's a very well worn, lots of roots and rocks. Typical White Mountain hiking. This is not considered difficult for White Mountain standards. And we're getting near the top of that third falls or flume. So if you take the basin's Cascade Trail, it comes right to this falls. The two below it are close enough you can hear them and see them. That's how I found them. It was a hot day, there was a lot of other people over there, and I just kind of went over where they were to see what was there, and sure enough it was beautiful. Yeah, the mountains are coming out. We'll see if we can get up North Kinsman if I have enough time. I've been down here quite a while just looking around. I've got plenty of daylight. I started at 7 a.m. So I've got some time to spare today. As long as I don't get too slowed down by other things, we might be able to get a view from North Kinsman today. Forecast was for increasing sun and increasing heights of the clouds. The bottoms of the clouds were going to be above the peaks, at least in places. But again, the mountains can make their own clouds. So just because the aviation forecast, which that's what I often look at, says ceilings above 5,000 or 6,000 feet, doesn't mean your mountain is going to have a ceiling above that elevation. Because the mountain can create its own clouds when the rest of the area is cloud free. Alright, well, it's just shortly above the first three falls that I don't believe are named. I am coming to a falls that has a name, Kinsman Falls. Let's see if we can get a look at it. It's going to be a little bit of a scramble down there, but we'll see if we can get a good perspective on it. And this is the trail right here, so you will come to this on the trail. No going off trail necessary to get to this one. Well, Kinsman Falls is definitely a straight down falls. It drops about 15-20 feet into a nice pool. I think this is where I turned around last year, and there was a lot of people swimming in there. It was a hot day, and so a good swimming hole. And definitely worth the about a half mile up from where the basin is, where the basin parking area is. Maybe a half mile to 3/4 mile up here, maybe 400 feet of gain so far. And we'll keep climbing. All right, well, Kinsman Falls is where I turned around because I don't recognize this ford here. So we're going to be in unexplored territory here, and some of those lower falls, the first falls, I hadn't seen either. That's why I came back and started at the bottom of the brook to see if I could find what was below the falls I found off trail last year. So you do have to ford Cascade Brook here at high water levels. Probably wouldn't be safe. Today we just need to be careful of slippery rocks, but it's low enough I don't think we'll have trouble finding those rocks. All right, well, we're getting near the Appalachian Trail. We've been on the south bank of Cascade Brook, which flows east. So we were on the north bank, and now we're on the south bank. And I think this falls is named, I don't see a name on any of the trees, so we'll add the name when I get that information and do the final edit. Yes, there's falls right here. Hard to judge the height of them from right here. It's in a stair step, maybe 30 feet, 15 feet here, and then another 10 or 15 feet down there. And we'll see what's around the corner. There's a really big pool above this falls. Normally if there's a big pool, there's a reason for it, either a sloping rock or a falls that carves out that pool. All right, well, we have reached the Appalachian Trail, just right above that falls. No white blazes that I can see here, but it's clearly marked as the Appalachian Trail. I don't think they have a lot of white blazes on the trail through this area, but it's usually you can follow it. You just have to pay attention to the signs when you get to a trail junction. So we're crossing the brook again, going back to the north bank of Cascade Brook, and it's a rock hop. I'm going to make sure this phone is zipped up in a Ziploc and in my pack so that if I do lose my balance, I won't ruin the phone. I'm not worried about my feet getting wet. If it happens, it happens. And up here we'll make a decision whether to take the Kinsman Pond Trail or stay on the Appalachian Trail. I'll make that decision when I get there, and I think it's clearing up enough now that going up North Kinsman Peak would be a good use of my time. All right, well, after crossing Cascade Brook on the Appalachian Trail, moderate hiking for about a half a mile to the junction with the Kinsman Pond Trail. It's advertised as less traveled, can be hard to find and hard to follow, and has some limitations. So I'm going to stay with the AT just to make some better forward progress towards, there's two beautiful lakes up here, Lonesome Lake and Kinsman Pond. And plenty of more streamside views to be had in places. So we're going to stay with the AT. I'm going to chart my course today as we go. Started at the Basin Cascade parking area. This trail right here at the top of my finger is the Basin Cascade Trail. 1.2 miles is what the sign said to the junction with the AT. We've come up another half mile to the junction with the Kinsman Pond Trail. I'm going to stay on this orange line up to Lonesome Lake. I don't know if I'll take the time to go around the lake on the way out. The AT is also called the Fish and Jimmy Trail up to Kinsman Pond. And then from there it's about a 6/10 of a mile to the summit of North Peak on the Kinsman Range. And there's supposed to be some ledges there with nice views. So I've eaten a lot of time up recording the beauty of these falls. But I have plenty of daylight this time of year. I'd like to be back to the car by 6 p.m., but I can certainly hike longer. There's no darkness till 8:30. So we're going to make 12:30, 1 o'clock my turnaround time. I could go a little longer than that because it'll be quicker on the way out. Usually I don't record as much on the way out. But a lot to see on the way up the Basin's Cascade Trail, and if you venture off of it, you'll see even more. The best falls are at the bottom. The ones at the top are interesting, but the ones at the bottom are unnamed and spectacular. So keep that in mind if you don't have as much time as I do to explore this area. All right, we have arrived at Lonesome Lake. It's not always that lonesome here because there's a Appalachian Mountain Club has a hut here that people can use this time of year for a charge. They provide meals and a bunkhouse. So yes, we'll cross this little bridge on the outlet to Lonesome Lake, which is Cascade Brook. We've been following it most of the way. Almost always within earshot and sometimes within sight of this trail. Straight ahead, we're at 2,700 feet. The knob in front of us is called Cannonball, or the Cannonballs. There's like 3 of them. And they're at like 3,700, and they're just barely in the clouds. So we'll monitor the situation. When I get up to Kinsman Pond, if it's if North Kinsman Peak is socked in, I'll just do a loop around here instead. I know what the inside of a cloud looks like. I don't need to hike extra distance for that. So let's enjoy the view of Lonesome Lake, and we'll keep heading southbound on the AT towards Kinsman Pond. Alrighty, well, we're closing in on Kinsman Pond. Quite a bit of climbing the last mile. We gained about 1,400 feet in elevation as we were ascending the Basin's Cascade Trail and the Appalachian Trail to Lonesome Lake. None of that was steep though. This is hand over foot in a lot of places. I've got some assists in here, some areas where they chiseled it out and built wooden steps in places. So this is slower going. We're probably going to have to make Kinsman Pond to turn around just because of the time it's taken to hike a trail like this and to hike it back. But it is a 2,300 foot elevation change between where I parked and the top, with a little bit of duplication. So probably 2,500 feet to the pond from where we started. Well, this is like special effects in a Hollywood movie up here at Kinsman Pond. And yes, folks, you climb the mountain when you get here. You're almost at the top of the Kinsman Mountain. You're just a few hundred feet from the top, which is right behind us here. In and out of the fog though. As a matter of fact, the lake has been in and out of the fog the 20 minutes I've been sitting here. And the fog is lifted temporarily, so let's take a look. This is all rocks and ledge around it, no sand. Just rocks and piles of boulders that have tumbled into the lake. We'll walk around a little bit more. The Kinsman Pond Trail continues along the east side of this pond for a distance. We'll take a look at it from different angles, but this is a pretty nice little lake. Just really special because it's by itself. 4.5, 5 miles from the interstate, and secluded. But there is a campsite here with a lean-to and several tent platforms, so you can stay here if you're a through hiker or a day hiker, or excuse me, not a day hiker, a weekend hiker. So this is a worthy destination. Between the falls at the bottom, Lonesome Lake, which I'm going to look at more on the way down, and this lake, this is a good misty day destination where you don't want to get 5 miles into the woods and not get a view. Here you got something to look at, and it was pretty woods the whole way over here. I tried to make some clips of those woods. Mostly balsam fir up this high. Some red spruce, and not a lot of hardwood trees. So here comes that fog again. It's coming and going just like in the movies. All right, well, this misty scenery here is kind of neat in its own way. Certainly creates a different mood. And boy, you know, you come up this high in elevation, it's things that were in bloom a month ago down the valley are still in bloom. Mayflower. Well, it's almost July. It's the last week of June. And here's some Mayflower in bloom. So we're at about 3,800 feet, and I think where I parked was around 1,400. So 2,400 foot climb plus a little bit up and down, maybe a few hundred feet more. Scales off to about 5 miles. I know the last 2 miles from Lonesome Lake up to here climbed over 1,000 feet, but it was slow going with all those steps and rock faces that were chiseled out, and it'll probably be even slower going on the way down. So maybe a mile an hour for me in terrain like that. Very few places you can take a full step for long. Dwarf dogwood is also growing here. And yes, those look just like the leaves and flowers of a flowering dogwood. I've showed this on other hikes I've done in the mountains. But it's a ground cover, and it grows sideways instead of up. So imagine a dogwood tree not becoming a tree, but just growing sideways. And that's what it does. And it's not a tree, but it's, I think it's still classified in the same genus as a dogwood, the flowering dogwood that many of us have come to know. Well, I'm just going to try to capture the feel of this pond. The ridges are going to stay in the fog, it looks like, and I'm kind of running out of time. I always pick a turnaround time And I was down there looking at those Cascades for about 2 hours before I made very much forward progress on this hike. So we're going to make this a turnaround point. This was definitely worth coming up to, for me at least. Just because it's so surreal up here. It's different, it's clean. It's, you know, there's no cottages. This is a mountain lake in its pure form. So we'll just poke along the edge here a little bit longer, and eventually we do need to turn around. But if you want to see Kinsman Pond, you have to get off the Appalachian Trail and take the Kinsman Pond Trail. So let's see what else is down here as the fog comes and goes. And I've come about halfway down the east side of Kinsman Pond here. Got my own little rock to perch on here. This trail is a little uneven, but scrambling required, but beautiful because of the views you get of this pond. And rock slides that are coming and going from view on the east slopes of Kinsman Mountain here. Right there's a rock slide disappearing into the clouds. So I think from here we can see the whole length of the pond. South end, all these water lilies in the middle here. The north end is just around the bend there. So I think this mountain is making its own cloud today. It looks like there's blue sky downhill from here. If you go north from here, you lose elevation. Within 6 or 7 miles of here, you're down below 1,000 feet. So the air is condensing over this mountain range today. I talked about that earlier, how that happens. And it's hard to predict. And days like that, you definitely have to plan for other things to see besides the views that are so common in the White Mountains. So let's do a little recording on the way back down. I'm going to go back down to Lonesome Lake on the Appalachian Trail. I'm probably going to take a different trail down towards the basin parking lot. I'll map that out when I get there. I'll make that decision when I get there. But this was worth it. Between the falls and these two beautiful mountain lakes, this was definitely worth it as a day hike. So I would definitely recommend it. And you know, it's in the 50s up here. Highs were supposed to be in the 70s in the valley, 60s up here. Well, it's in the 50s right now, and I'm glad I brought the extra layers. All right, well, we are on our way back down. We've only been on the trail 15 minutes, and I'm getting some views I didn't get on the way up. Partly because it was in the clouds, and partly because it was that, you know, I was not facing this way. But we are getting some views of Cannon Mountain off in the distance there. Way over there. I'm not sure what that structure is at the top. There's a tramway from the bottom, but I don't know if that's the top of the tramway or the top of a chairlift or something else. But that's Cannon Mountain. We've made our way back to Lonesome Lake here. Still cloudy. The cannonball right there is out of the clouds now. And looking across to Franconia Ridge, the tops are still in the clouds. I'm guessing about a 4,000, maybe 4,500 foot ceiling over that. We're going to scoot around the east side of Lonesome Lake here and not take the Appalachian Trail down to the basin's Cascade Trail. The next couple miles was a lot of roots and rocks. It wasn't steep, but the footing was, you had to think a lot. I've heard this other trail is a little easier footing. I can get on a bike path that's paved to get back to where I parked. So that's my plan right now, is going to get on the Lonesome Lake Trail, which descends to the Lafayette campground from the east side of this lake, kind of where that kayaker is sitting right now. Over that way. What a great hike. Coming back down the steep part of Kinsman Mountain, just below the pond. The first mile, every step had to be carefully planned and placed, and I can't even do a mile an hour on a trail like that without taking more risk than I want to. So we can start moving better now though. So this is going to be 11 hours in the woods today, and that's as much time as I was planning to spend in the woods today. So looks like a mile and a half to Lafayette campground, and then it's like another 2 miles on a paved bike path, which I can walk 3 miles an hour on pavement. So let's go see what's around here. All right, in the Lonesome Lake Trail, we'll turn right and go away from the lake in just a minute here, but let's take one last look at this lake. And Kinsman Pond was definitely lonelier than this. The AMC Lodge here is, I think it's pretty big. I don't know how much room is inside it, but it's pretty big. So probably not too lonesome in the summertime. A lot of people stay here. Backpackers, weekend hikers, and through hikers. And there's that sun just trying to eat away at these clouds. I think we saw the cannonball from the other end of the lake. Now we're looking back up towards Kinsman Mountain, and yes, it is out of the clouds, but it took all afternoon. I was running out of time. Even if it had been clear up there, I probably would have had to turn around. Some nice water lilies right there. And the AMC Lodge is kind of behind these trees here. There's a dock there. There's a lot of people hanging out. So what a beautiful hike. This is going to end up being, I guess, not a figure eight, but more like a lollipop, where the lollipop that I'm doing is at the bottom of the mountain, not the top. We'll take one last look at the trail map. And if anything comes into view as I descend to Lafayette Campground, it's called the Pemmy Trail, that follows the, basically follows the interstate, but not always in sight of the interstate. If anything comes into view along the way, I'll record it. If not, we'll wrap this up in a couple hours here. I'll just record a little bit of this Lonesome Lake Trail. We're about halfway down the mountain. You can see there's some rocks, almost no roots. And especially after hiking all day, this is just easier, you know, physically. You don't have to think as hard of where to put your feet. So I'm glad I came this way. The Appalachian Trail gets thousands of people, and I think this one does too. So it may be more, sometimes it's the type of trees that are growing underneath the soil. The deeper rooted trees like these birches tend to have less roots to make your hiking difficult. When you get where it's all either red maple or any of the softwood trees, the pines, the spruces, the balsam firs, those trees, all the roots are at the surface. So as the trail gets heavily used, the dirt is gone and there's nothing but roots and rocks. So that's what I found on the part of the Appalachian Trail below Lonesome Lake. And then above Lonesome Lake, it was all of the above, plus a lot of steep ledges with, they actually chiseled out handholds and footholds. So that slows you down too. But this kind of hiking, I can do 2 or 3 miles an hour. Just a question how big a step you can take, how much thinking you have to do every time you put your foot down. Well, what a pleasant way to do the last 2 miles of this all-day adventure. Came down that Lonesome Lake Trail, which I showed the footing was much more predictable and, you know, easy hiking by White Mountain standards compared to some of the stuff we ran into earlier today and even on some other hikes. So this is called the Franconia State Park multi-use path or something like that. It goes from the Lafayette campground where the Lonesome Lake trail comes down to, and this goes right down to the basin where I started this morning. So I've been on the road, or on my feet since 7 this morning, and it's 5:30. So my goal was to have a turnaround time that would let me get back to the car by 6. I think I'm going to make that. So let's take one last look at the map. And I'm going to tell you, this whole area along this valley here where you start these hikes, this is not like old farmland. These are huge, huge yellow birch trees back here, and there's lots of them, and they're everywhere. And there's no other types of trees that would indicate this was like cleared any time recently. That and this witch hobble are indications that the woods has been around a while as woods. Now, there's always been a reason for people to use this Franconia Notch as a passageway to get across New Hampshire. So why it was overlooked for logging, I don't know, but it looks like it has been, at least anytime soon. Maybe back in the 1700s, early 1800s, but boy, there's some huge, there's huge yellow birches like this one here, and there's a lot of them. And nothing in between that would indicate that it was logged. So I'm going to put the map down here. Let's take a quick look at it. Basin Cascade parking lot. It's on both sides of 93, one for northbound, one for southbound. You go underneath 93. If you park on the northbound side, there's a tunnel. And this trail right here, Basin's Cascade Trail, shows up on the map there. It says 0.8, the sign said 1.2. It took a while, but I was recording the falls. Moderate, nothing real difficult. Appalachian Trail is in orange. And lots of roots, lots of rocks, but not real steep to Lonesome Lake. And not real steep until about halfway up to Kinsman Pond. And then it wasn't just the steepness, it was the footing. All those wooden blocks that were bolted on, and they had chiseled out little footholds. And that was okay on the way up, but on the way down I had to be extra careful. So these mileages don't add up to that much. It's like 4.5 miles up to Kinsman Pond, and at that point I was kind of running low on extra time, and this was all in the fog up here. I didn't see any reason to go up North Peak of the Kinsman Range. But that certainly I could have done, especially if I hadn't taken the time to record all these waterfalls. Coming back down, I retraced my steps to Lonesome Lake, and then got on what looks like a little skier symbol there. That's the Lonesome Lake Trail. It just moderately descends, but it descends the whole way down to Lafayette Campground, but nothing difficult. And now we're on this path right here. It says Pemmy Trail. I don't know. I didn't see a sign that said that. But it's a paved trail, and it goes from this Lafayette campground. Actually, it goes above it, it looks like. Right down to where we started at Basin Cascades. So what a great way to finish an all-day hike. I'm going to guess about 11 miles. It could have been a little bit more if you add up all the trail signs. And I was in the woods about 11 hours, but only recording maybe 9 of those. So, and that type of terrain, especially the upper part of that trail up to Kinsman Pond, it's hard to even do a mile an hour, especially on the down climb. So for me to average 1.5 miles an hour, that's doing pretty good in the mountains for me. And what a great place to explore. I've got one more hike planned before I head back. I'll probably upload that maybe a week after this one gets uploaded. And that's if I can get that hike in tomorrow. I'm going to try. It looks like the weather's going to be good for another hike in this area.